Hey guys, this is the continuation of the Understand for Powers of 10. This is in your Monday packet. Okay, it's page 11 down at the bottom of the paper. And today we are going to be discussing how can you multiply and divide decimals by 10. Now, let's look at the example. It says find 500 times 10. Check your answers using a model. When you multiply by a value of 10, the digit moves one place to the left. But the way I say it, we say the decimal moves one place to the right. If I can spell right. Okay, so look right here. You had 500. So when we have 500, that means 500. That means you're only coloring in 5 of these little unit blocks. Okay, and when we multiply it by 10, you move that decimal one place to the right, and you end up getting 5/10. So that means you have done this 5 hundredths 10 different times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this gives us 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10. Okay? So let's look at the examples below. It says 5 thousandths times 10. So if we use the same thing, that the decimal moves to the right when we multiply. Okay, so I have 1 0 here. So that means I'm going to move this decimal one place over. So it turns into 5 hundredths. Okay, so if I have 5 hundredths times what gives me 5/10. Okay, how many places do I need to move this decimal here to get 5/10? Well, 1. So if I only move the decimal one place, that means I'm multiplying by 10. Okay, blank times 10 is 5. Now, to get this answer, what you could do is you come over here and say, okay, 5 divided by 10. Okay, so that means I'm going to take my 5 with its decimal, move the decimal over one place. So it gives you 5/10. And what is 5 times 10? 50. All right, this question right here says, how can you rewrite 5 hundredths times 10 equals 5/10 as a division equation? Now, I just did that up here. Remember when we talked about inverse operation? It means the opposite. Like if you're multiplying 1, the inverse would be division. And if you're adding, the inverse would be subtraction. So right now it says we are multiplying. So the inverse of multiplying is dividing. Okay? So when we set up a division problem from a multiplication problem, you have your two sets of factors, which are right here. Okay, these are your factors. This is your product. Okay, so what we do to set up this division problem, we take our product, which is 5/10, divide it by 10, and you get the other factor. Okay, and how do I know this is correct? Because I know that multiplication is the inverse, sorry, spelled inverse wrong, inverse operation of division. Okay. So we know that, I know that multiplication is the inverse of division. So I just rearranged the numbers to create a division problem. Okay? So it's really that simple. You just have to be able to explain your reasoning. Okay? Now that is page 11. Let's go on and look at page 12. Okay? So now we have to shade in, and I'm going to get my pencil to shade it in. So, like I told the class the other day in teaching, you have 200s as my smallest number. Okay, so 200s. If I were to fill this 200s and I wanted to deal with a whole number, I'm dealing with the flat. Okay, so that's how we get our whole number, because some of the people were like, well, that's 100. I said, yes, it is 100 when we're dealing with whole numbers. But when we're dealing with decimals, this 100 flat turns into a single number. Okay, so each time one of these flats or sheets are completely colored in, that equals one whole number. So if I have the digit or the number 2, how much of this would I need to color in to get a whole number? That's right, the answer is 2. So, for time's sake, this is not going to be the neatest thing. So that's 1. And here's 2. So 1 and 2. All right, 2/10. Okay, 2/10, and remember, a tenth is this whole rod. Okay, a tenth is a whole rod. Do not let these little unit blocks throw you off. A tenth is a whole rod. So I have 1/10 here, 1/10 here, and it continues with 1/10, 1/10, 1/10. So if I wanted to represent 2/10, I have to color in 1/10, 2/10. Okay, 200s, very simple, 2 of these little things. Now we're going to use the shaded grid that we just did in problem 3 to complete the multiplication sentences that show how the models are related. Okay, so I have, look at model A and B. How is 2/10 related to the number 2? Well, look right here. 2/10 times 10. I'm going to move that decimal over to the right, because when we multiply, the decimal moves to the right. 2/10 times 10 gives me 2. All right? Now look at the model B and C. How are they related? Now we're multiplying, okay? So we're going to take the smaller number out of the 2. And if we take the smaller number out of the 2, we get 0 and 2, 0.02, which is 2 thousandths, times 10 gives me 2 hundredths. And then you're like, well, Miss Moore, why didn't we choose 2 hundredths? Well, you've already done 2 hundredths up here to get the number 2. So they want us to use models B and C to get this one. And I know since I'm multiplying, the number's going to get larger. So I take the smaller number out of the 2. Okay, we're still going to use this, and we're going to do division. Okay, division. So with division, let's change our mindset. Remember, with division, it goes that way. All right. Look at models A and B. Boop, boop. Okay. I'm going to give you a little hint. It's the inverse of this. So models A and B. Blank divided by blank gives me blank. Okay, so I'm going to take the larger number out of the 2, okay, which is 2. 2 divided by 10, I move that decimal over one time to the left, gives me 0.2. Okay, see, it's the opposite of what we did up here. We just switched the numbers around. So we're going to do the same thing right here. 2 tenths divided by 10 is 2 hundredths. Okay, so we are going to imagine that there is a D box up here. Okay, there's a model D. Now, this model D shows 2 thousandths, okay? That means that they took this and they divided it into 10 more spaces. Now, we have to write a multiplication equation and division equation that show model C. So model C was 2 hundredths. Model D is 2 thousandths. Okay? We have to write a multiplication and division on how they are related. So let's go ahead and do the multiplication first. Remember, with the multiplication, we use the lower number first. So which one is which one is smaller? 2 hundredths or 2 thousandths? I hope you said 2 thousandths because that is correct. So 2 thousandths times 10 gives me 2 hundredths. Now we're going to do the inverse. So the inverse, we would take the product, divide it by 10, and that gives us our new answer. Now, how do we know this? So, basically, we know this because patterns of 10, okay? Because power of 10, I'm sorry. So, we know this because there is a pattern based on the powers of 10. Okay, we know this because there is a pattern based on the powers of 10. Okay? If you need to, pause that to get this written down. All right. So we're still with lesson number 2. And we have to fill in these blanks. The missing powers of 10. Missing. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how many times from the answer to one of the factors did we move the 0. And that is where we put the 10. All right, so how many places did I have to move the decimal to go from 4 hundredths to 4 tenths? So I have how many places? 1. And each time we go, it's worth 10. So that would be 10 right there. So 4 hundredths times 10 gives me 4 tenths. Okay. Next one, I have blank times 6 thousandths equals a tenth. So how many times do I have to move this decimal over to get it to 6 tenths? 1, 2. Okay, so that's 10 times 10, which gives me 100. See, because every time I'm moving in a place value, okay, every time, that is a 10. Okay, so like right here, if I had a little thing, You have hundreds, okay? We have our tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and I have my little decimal right here, okay? Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. All right, so I have 6 thousandths right here, okay? And I need to get it to 6 tenths. 1, 2. Now, each time I moved, 1, 2, I increased by a power of 10. So I have power of 10, and then I have another power of 10. Now, I have some people say, oh, it's 20. No, it's not 20. You end up by a power of 10, so that means you're going to multiply 10 times 10. And that gives you 100. Okay, let's look at the next one. I have 7 thousandths times blank gives me 7. How many times do I have to move that decimal to get to the number 7? Well, 1, 2, 3. So 10 times 10 times 10, that's 1,000. Okay, let's do again. 4 thousandths times blank gives me 4. That's 1, 2, 3. 10 to the third power is 1,000. This one right here. 1, 2, 3. They're having a lot of threes here, and that's 1,000. Okay. Now, 7 hundredths times what gives me 7? Well, 1, 2. That's 100. Okay, so right here, it says when you multiply a decimal by a power of 10, okay, when we are multiplying a decimal, remember, we move to the right. What is the relationship between the number of places the decimal moves and the number of zeros in the power of 10? Remember, what is that relationship? For every 0 you move, that's right. Okay, wait, it should be the relationship. The relationship between places the decimal moves to 0 or zeros is that for every 0 the decimal moves moves one place to the right. Okay, so the relationship, they're saying, how is this, what is this? So it's like the relationship between the places the decimal moves to zeros is that for every 0, the decimal moves one place to the right. And what's an example of this? Well, I'm just going to use one of these problems. Example would be 7 hundredths times 100 equals 7. I can go 1, 2. And that's your example. So if you need a second to copy this down, please take it. And you'll do that now. In a second, you're probably going to hear my alarm go off, and I apologize, but it's just it's for a regular school day. All right, now, you probably paused it to get the rest of this copy down. So let's look at the next part. The next part says complete the equations. We can complete equations. Okay, it says 300 times 1,000. 300 times 1,000. Now I'm going to move that decimal, however many number of zeros there is. So I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. So that means I'm going to move this decimal 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. And y'all are saying, well, there's nothing there. Well, guess what? We get to put something there. You're going to fill in that little hump right there with a 0. So 300 times 1,000 is 30. Okay, we're going to do the same thing down here. Sorry, hit the table. I have 8 thousandths times 100. How many zeros? 1, 2. 1, 2. My answer is 8 tenths. Okay, let's go to right here. Now, this page right here is going to help you when you do your homework and with your problem solving tonight or later today. So I have the ones, tenths, hundreds, thousandths. Okay, now, when you are multiplying or dividing, remember, with a whole number, you have that decimal that's always there, but sometimes we don't see it. All right? Now, for this paper, your decimal is stationary. We can't move the decimal, okay? But we can move the number. So, I have 9 divided by 10. Okay, remember, there is that magic decimal that's right here. If I move that decimal to the, since we're dividing, moves to the left. For every number is 0, so that means 1. One time, I get 9 tenths. Okay. If I divide 9 by 100, okay, same thing here. 2 places, so 1, 2. I get 9 hundredths. Do you see a pattern here? What would the next one be? 9 times 1,000, you're right, would be 9 thousandths. Okay. Now, let's write the quotient. If you need to, you can come right over here. Okay, I have, remember the decimal moves to the left. I have 3 hundredths divided by 100. Okay, so I'm going to move my decimal to the left one time, and I get 0.003. Same thing here. If I have 3 tenths divided by 100, I'm going to move that decimal 2 places, 1 place, 2 places, and fill in that gap. Okay, if I have the whole number 3, and I have that decimal right here, divided by 1,000. 1, 2, 3. Now look, we got the same answer for each question using different numbers. Okay. How is the way the decimal point moves when you divide the decimal by power of 10 the same as when you multiply? Well, it's the same because it is determined by, sorry, that's my buzzer, by the number of zeros. Okay. And it is different because with multiplying, the decimal moves right, and with dividing, it moves left. Okay, so you can pause the video to get this written up. All right, so right down here, we're going to complete the equation showing powers of 10 using exponents. Okay, so basically, if you were, okay, just take away that equal sign. It's 8 times 100 is equal to saying 8 times 10 to the second power, which is true. So what is 8 times 100? Very good, 800. Okay, let's go ahead and follow this. I have 8 times 1,000 is equal to 10 times what? Well, I know I'm going to have 10 here because I'm dealing with powers of 10. I'm going to go count my number of zeros. 1, 2, okay, so it's 3. So what is 8 times 1,000? 8,000. Okay. 2 times blank is the same thing as saying 2 times 10 to the first power is equal to what? So remember, you can go back to the chart I showed you. 10 to the first power is just basically saying 10. And what is 2 times 10? 20. Okay. Ooh, we're going to have to work on this one. Okay, so I have 2 hundredths times 100 is the same thing as saying 2 hundredths times, okay, 10. I know 10 to the second power is 100. Okay. So with this, we have to move that decimal to the right. How many times? 2 times. So 1, 2. 2. So this has been your Monday's video notes. Okay, make sure you have done the Scoot assignment, which was moved to Google Forms, and your workbook pages 11 through 14. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. If not, you can go ahead and get started on your practice and problem solving papers. Have a good afternoon.